Coming up on this episode of Courage Over Comfort by Matt Logan Speaks.
When, my daughter died in a car crash, I met with Governor Dayton face to face just like this, and we discussed my opinion and they, what they wanted to do, and we talked about it, and, I didn't once say, let's not let anybody drive.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Right.
3 younger siblings, they all drive. So you have to look at the whole picture. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courage Over Comfort, and I have a guest here today. He's a pretty tall guy, a lot taller than I am. He's a dad, he's a husband, he's a legislator, and he's a guy with a lot of courage. So everybody, please help me welcome Nels Pierson. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I was just telling you off camera that the agenda today, right?
Yeah.
Now, I just said all those things, and I don't even know what we're going to talk about. We're just going to sit here and show people all the courage that you have.
Yeah, I want to sell real estate, so I thought that's what this was about. You didn't even mention
no,
I'm a
right.
realtor.
Yeah,
but
realtor.
fine.
That's true. Yeah. That doesn't make you who you are, though.
Well,
legislature, that's like, you mentioned a labor of love off camera, too, and
sure.
That's kind of a labor of love.
Yeah, in Minnesota, we're uniquely blessed to have a state where we recognize having a citizen legislature is something that's a priority. So having people coming from all walks of life, some people do use it as a full-time job with the benefits, and maybe having a spouse or someone else that can help subsidize the low income. And again, in my time in the legislature, it's actually gone up quite a bit. So we had an evaluation that was done on the salaries that legislators were paid in Minnesota, and there was an adjustment voted on by the citizens of the state, not on the watch of myself. I didn't vote myself a pay raise or anything like that. But I do think that that's an important component of our Minnesota state legislature, is the fact that we do have folks from all walks of life that are able to do it. There's only certain careers that can even allow for it. And being a realtor in Minnesota, it's a tricky situation because our spring market's usually pretty busy, and that's our legislative calendar is usually where we gavel in the beginning of January and gavel out in the middle of May is the general time frame. Except for this year. This year's a unique calendar for us, and we're dealing with the legislature in a whole new manner.
Are you doing that remotely?
So for the first time in the history of the state, we are doing a lot of remote activities.
Sure.
The attorneys and our state folks that have run this for decades, reviewing the Constitution, they have basically acknowledged that they're wanting for every House session, they want there to at least be 90 members of the Minnesota State House out of 134. They want 90 members in the city of St. Paul. And they believe that will fulfill the constitutional requirement of being in the seat of government of the state of Minnesota if they're in the city of St. Paul. So
interesting.
Right now they allow 12 members from each party on the House floor. And so you've got 24 there, and then they've said everything from being in your office at the state office building to sitting in the parking lot in your car as being like, qualifying capacity. And they actually
FaceTime with
they prioritized it for us, and they put it in reverse of what they thought. They said, we want the most members that we can have at home. We don't want you coming to St. Paul. So I have the convenience of being able to then, out of my office in my home here in Rochester Township, to be able to make a phone call into the Minnesota State Legislature. And they, through the clerk process, they give us roll calls on all the votes that are required to have roll calls rather than pushing a button. I have to voice vote all of those votes into the House of Representatives from my home in Rochester, and it's really strange again because in my time I've only been in the legislature since 2015 was when I was sworn in. I won election in 2014, but they swear in January, like I mentioned, and during that time then that's the only other time that we've been outside of the House chamber because they were remodeling the Capitol.
Yeah.
And we had a special session while the chamber was being remodeled, and we actually had a legislative house session in the state office building. And again, it was just another historic. We've never met outside of that chamber since that chamber was built in 1910.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like these wow moments that, unless you're a political wonk, it's probably not that interesting. But for me, it's been like, wow, that I was there while these things are happening is really unique and kind of exciting and bizarre. And of course, under the circumstances that we're under, it's a little stressful and tenuous too. So
yeah, for sure. And I think that it's so important that rules are rules, and rules need to be followed. And obviously, if you have something like the COVID that we're dealing with right now and so many unknowns, I'm not sure I'm on board with completely changing the rules forever, but definitely maybe looking at some of the options that you're doing now is great.
And I think
makes sense.
I think within the chambers, there's been a lot of unique consensus that there has to be a lot of agreement on whatever's being put forward to the legislature in moments like these, and primarily because that ability to debate and that ability to persuade each other in person, there is definitely some merit to that.
Absolutely.
And there's a reason that we're up there, and that passion, that ability to speak on the House floor is lost in these circumstances, obviously, if I'm calling in remotely from Rochester. So if there were something I felt passionately, strongly for or against one of these bills that's being put forward right now, I would hightail it up there and make sure I was in my seat if I can be. But for the most part, these are issues where we're really addressing some emergency concerns. There's been a lot of consensus being built up about these issues prior to the votes being had on the House and Senate floor. The insulin bill, the emergency insulin bill, is an example of that, and we have now passed some legislature that we were already working on before the COVID concerns had shut us down and forced us basically to not meet live on the House floor. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, you mentioned persuasion and things like that, and it's definitely a huge factor in what you're talking about and how to get your point across with somebody, and maybe not even point, but your view, your opinion, your thought. You do that in person is so much more dynamic than it is on video or whatever else, which is why I try to do these in person.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the big filter in the background and stuff, the medical, you can see it, but it's off camera, and the things that we are taking precautions for, of course.
Yeah.
But
well, no, and I think there is something to be said for that. Even going one step further, when we're on the House floor, that's all on the record. And if a court of law is asked to interpret what was the intent of this legislation when the bill was written, they can then look at the actual House floor debate and talk about, well, it was spoken on the House floor and nobody refuted it on the House floor. So we interpret the intent to mean what was said, not only in the statute, but what was said on the House floor can be taken into consideration, and because without that, we would have amended it or changed the bill in order to mean something different. So those types of things can have an impact, and they have been used in a court of law in the past as how do we interpret this, and that's something that we have to be aware of. And of course, if you're in your home office, you're not able to express those dynamics. Again, most of this stuff is pretty straightforward, but that stuff where there's nuances to it, we have to be careful of how far we take that.
Yeah, the energy that you feel when you're trying to present something to people, so different when there's a room full or even 10, whatever.
Right.
But even face-to-face, one-on-one, the energy is so much different. That not only the energy that you're getting, but the energy that you're giving. And, that's so important too. So hopefully it doesn't last very long.
Right.
Because I think it's important, both sides.
Right.
I didn't know what party you represented until, 10 10 minutes ago,
Yeah.
So that's definitely not what this is about.
Right.
I'm not promoting you or putting you down,
I
or
appreciate
I'm not,
that. No
any
worries.
of those things. So it's just conversation. And I think that's the thing that's important now, is to understand that people, and I'm not going to, I don't give up my political beliefs quickly and easily, but I definitely would have to say that I try to look at all sides of everything and vote on surgically is maybe the way to put it. And if this person looks good for my area, I don't really, I look at their party later.
Yeah, and
their policies.
I think there's different approaches to how people legislate as well. There are those people who walk into the job and say, I'm going to vote my beliefs 100% of the time. And then there are people who will say, well, I'm going to listen to my district.
Yes.
And I'm going to vote my district's opinions and views 100% of the time. And then there's hybrids of that all the way through a spectrum of ideas through that lens as well. So, I try to listen to all the opinions, but I certainly am rooted in some core beliefs as well. And so I think these are, again, interesting times that are calling for some bigger discussions on what role government should take in our lives. And right now we have a government that's taking a huge role in our lives. And that's a strange and new dynamic and challenging dynamic for many people.
I will say it is very strange. It's very strange. And I think so both sides of the aisle, I think they have noble ideas. I think both sides of the aisle want people to be okay and be safe and things like that. I just think that for me, what I see is only one opinion seems to matter, one direction, right? I think that I don't see a lot of things, a lot of different options and solutions being looked at. And maybe I'm missing that, but I see like, this is the way we're going to do it. We don't care what Nels has to say about it, and that is it.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Well, I think,
and I don't mean to like get into it.
No. And
that's my viewpoint.
More generally, and I respect that. Just generally speaking, the Minnesota state of Minnesota has been a very blue state. I happen to be a Republican. For those that also didn't know my political party, I'm a Republican in a Democrat state, and that's something I have to acknowledge and believe. And I happen to live in a district that typically has voted for Republicans all the way up and down the ballot, and so I feel very good about that. But we were represented in the House of Representatives 4 years before I took office by a Democrat. So I have to be aware of the fact that certainly can happen again. And I always say that I don't believe either political party has a monopoly on good ideas. I think both sides can come to the table with good ideas. In some situations in the Minnesota State Legislature, you may say one bill, one idea that actually fails in the preceding year that was carried by a Democrat. And when the Republicans take over control, that bill is now going to be authored by a Republican. And I've been in that chair taking legislature from a Democrat. And really, it's almost an acknowledgement that I can't get this bill passed. See if you can get it across the goal line.
Sure.
And there's a lot more working together on some of those ideas. As it turns out that I think people don't fully, if you're outside of the bubble, you don't necessarily know that that's what's going on. But I would then get those Democrats to be co-authors on that bill, and then they know that there's support from both sides of the aisle. And as we bring that forward and these omnibus bills are gathered together, then those ideas are included because it looks like there is bipartisan support, and folks that really care about those issues will help us get those through the hurdles that it takes to get through an omnibus bill. So, in many ways, that dynamic of working together is something we have to acknowledge. Republicans have not won statewide elections, but we actually have controlled the Minnesota House of Representatives many years over the last couple decades, and that's actually gone back and forth like almost a tennis match in many situations. It's been pretty uncommon. When I was first elected, the Republicans took over the majority in the House, and we actually won in the next cycle, and we're still in the majority. And now this time we've lost that majority. At the same time, the Senate has held the majority for the Republican Party. So we're the only state out of 50. We're the only state that has a divided legislative body. So the House is controlled by the Democrats right now. The Senate
we're the
is
only
controlled.
state?
We're the only. Every other state, it's either both Democrats or both Republicans, or Nebraska, where it's a unicameral one body. So that you got to kind of take that out of the equation.
Yeah.
But it's not divided, so it's still an accurate statement to say we're the only one out of 50 where you have this divided balance. And that really means, even prior to this COVID activity, we really needed to have agreement for something to truly move forward anyway.
Yeah.
We did pass the budget bill last year. So technically the state of Minnesota is basically on a budget plan for the next 2 years.
Okay.
Our issue or our dilemma is going to be with what's going on economically right now in the state of Minnesota. We're probably going to see shortfalls because revenue is just not coming in as it would have been predicted. Sales tax, income tax, these are our primary sources for funding the state of Minnesota's government. And
state level.
And we're for sure seeing a huge decrease, at least over the next couple months. And I think one can anticipate it's going to have a further drawdown, over the rest of this year. However that plays out, we still are uncertain of that. The governor, as of today, actually modified some executive orders, basically to provide some ability for manufacturing and specific non-customer interactive businesses to move forward and start opening and start production again, if that's a possibility within their. There's a whole layout of rules that you really are supposed to be following in order to justify opening these places, but it is loosening it up at least in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yeah, I want to make sure and talk about your adoption. You have 2 biological children.
Yeah. And
I hear they're great.
Yeah.
And
depends on the
I
day.
said that because they're maybe listening, or I don't know, but and you've had some adoption things. I want to make sure and talk about that, but let me ask you this. Can I ask you some questions about some of these things? Are you comfortable with that? I mean, and you can, like I said before, if there's something,
we're pretty public, and I do. There are lines that I draw and specifically talk about of things, areas I don't talk about.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So make sure you draw the lines, dude.
I know where they are. So
yeah. Exactly. All right. So when I look at some of these things, I don't think that a broad paintbrush is really necessary and required, and that's my opinion. And I think that they're painting this with a really broad paintbrush and painting everything over, rather than kind of getting out and being a little bit more like an artist, right? And painting a beautiful picture or color, color in the lines type thing. And does that make sense to do it that way? So in other words, you're out in western Minnesota and there's 500 people in your city and you're on lockdown, shelter in place, and no one's really coming and going anywhere outside of that area. Is it wise to have those businesses closed down? And I don't know anybody in western Minnesota. I've been there. I've been there, but and I didn't know that. I've been there. There's a lot of small cities, and their restaurants are closed. And I mean, I'm reading about different places all over our country. We're not going to be able to open. We've now passed the point of no return as a business. We can't open again. Mm-hmm. That's real. It's frustrating for me as a former business owner, and as I guess this is a business, but it's not a business that's making money. It's just a business to, as the model. But so it's really frustrating for me to see that. New York makes a lot of sense. I've been there many, many, many times. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody's on top of each other. Let's be honest about it. It's a bad deal to have.
The one size fits all approach is always a little heavy handed in government, and I think one of the challenges here is it is a kind of an invisible disease. We don't know who has it. We don't know who has the antibodies already. We don't know. There are so many things we don't know, and I think
should we be scared of what we don't know?
Well,
that's what I see.
Having heard reports of what has happened in other countries, I think caution is certainly appropriate at this time.
Caution is different than fear.
Yeah.
Being afraid.
Yeah. Well, I think,
if I'm getting to a line,
no.
But you know what I'm saying? They're so very different things.
Right. I just think again, what the number of issues that Italy specifically, Italy had basically did have an overwhelmed health care system.
But then you'd have to ask the question, let's take a look at their healthcare system.
Right,
I've been to Italy, and so I've read a lot about them. I've been in many of their cities.
The number of beds that they had available.
You have to look at all those things.
They were already at capacity when they started. And, I think because of that, had that happened in the United States before what had happened in Italy, though, I don't know that we would have been prepared. Mayo Clinic had been proactive and actually closed down the non-essential surgeries and anything they could put off for a time. But even those, right now we're faced with a system that's not overwhelmed right now, and this is one of the things I think will align with what you're gearing towards. Even right now, we've pushed off a lot of medical procedures for people who are maybe in pain or have tests that need to be run that until those tests are run, they've got a lot of questions in their mind. At first, it was even test if they could be delayed as long as it wasn't like an imminent health issue. Like we know that this person isn't going to die in the next few days or weeks if they don't get this test. But now they've opened that up even a little further. So if you need the test basically to relieve pain, to adjust medications, to do life-improving activities, not just life-saving activities, some of that's loosened up a little bit. But we've got a system right now that's not overwhelmed. And we've got all these procedures that we're pushing down the pipeline. What happens if the system does get overwhelmed and all these procedures have been being delayed and they really now need to start coming in and having things being done?
Sure.
We're going to have an overwhelmed system also. The idea was to flatten the curve.
So what I think, I want to just make sure I understand what you're saying. What I hear you say, Nels, is that at the beginning, it was the right decision.
I think so. Yeah.
Shut it down.
Well,
and I agree with you.
Nobody knew how contagious this was going to be.
Totally. We needed more information. I agree 100%. I think initially the decision, and I don't have the dates in front of me, but they closed China down at the end of January, the travel.
I don't know enough information to know the dates.
Yeah, but I've read a ton about it, but I mean, people, fact check me on this. I'm not doing this by quotes, but end of January, they shut down the travel. There's an argument that, but 40,000 people still came in from China. Okay, but circle back and look at the fact of that. The fact is, and this is, again, I did check these facts, those 40-some-odd thousand people had some sort of tie to the United States. Mm-hmm. Some of them were citizens. Right. Some of them had family that lived here they had already applied or whatever the case was. There was a direct tie to the United States. They had every right to come in as a U.S. citizen or green card, however that, those terms, visa, whatever it was. But they had the right to come here even under those circumstances. Okay, so, and obviously 40,000 people in amongst the millions that were happening every day is nothing. So you can throw that argument, in my opinion, away. Well, they didn't really shut that's the big argument. Sure. Well, they didn't really shut it down. Well, they did. But so if you take some of those things into account and shutting the borders down and that now gave them a little bit of time to look at everything like they did and There's the missing month of February or something like that. A lot of people talk about. You've probably heard that too, and things. But you keep looking, and all the things they did and studied was remarkable in that month, and the preparation that was happening up to saying, yes, this is a point. We now have enough information. We need to shut down. Mm-hmm. I completely agree with what was done. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. I agree with it. And but that was over a month ago. And now we're having this is confusing to me. And I really wasn't planning on talking about that specific today.
Sure.
But no doubt there's a lot of other people that watch and listen are concerned and worried too about it. When is that attitude of when is it gonna really change? Can it change? Can we really be surgical about the decisions that are made on a government level to help Western Minnesota or help Rochester and some of these things?
Yeah, and again, there's a lack of information still out there. We do know more than we knew. I think we still have a lot of things we don't know, and I think the attitude of getting people tested so we know who has had it already, has antibodies already built up. If we have a third of the population that's walking around with antibodies built up for an immunity to this thing already, that's a totally different scenario than if it's just 5% or something like that. There's a huge window of information that I think is missing with children. In a lot of situations, children just aren't even really being tested at all because their immune systems are strong. We don't even bother testing them because we are isolating them at home as it is for the most part. So other than some tracking on a few who maybe are immune compromised who have died,
right? And it's thankfully very, very, very
low.
Few. Yeah.
And so, but we don't know, where are these antibodies and where's all that at? And so, it's a lot of these questions where here we have the parks. Kids aren't allowed on playground equipment. Well, if we discover that 89% of the kids out there have an antibody built up to this and we're cautious and washing everyone, and is that really the most important thing, is to shut down parks?
Right.
So that kids are messing around with something else and more likely to get hurt or injured or something bad happening on the other side of that. Because, it's every action we take has an inverse and opposite reaction, and
it's not an equal. It's not an equal reaction.
It could be better or worse.
Yes.
And so we have to analyze and think through all of that. And when it comes to the COVID fatalities, there are other people who will die because of this that are unrelated to COVID, right?
Completely.
Whether it's business owners that just can't deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
Or even just mental health and personal health degrading because of that mental health component, and depression, and we know that these types of things just can have a negative impact on a person's ability to thrive, right?
And that is happening with kids. I see it all over the place. I mean, the mental health of kids, especially little kids, that you can't they don't have the reasoning skills yet.
Right.
This isn't rational to them.
No, right.
And so they're like, well, why can't we play in the playground?
Right.
And so that is already happening. That you can see it and prove it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Boy, it's confusing.
These are strange times. And again, I think the state of Iowa has taken a big step today. Again, they've announced that they're opening up the state.
Yeah.
I think there are, again, a lot of restrictions, a lot of emphasis. The state of Minnesota doing some things to at least get people back to work. I think that's important. I think that, in my discussions with leadership in Mayo Clinic, even I've had the discussion that, in an environment like a medical facility, where best can we create practices of it's not social distancing, it's physical distancing. It's that ability to have people know, well, am I sick? Am I at risk of transferring this? And having that just generally, Mayo Clinic specifically should be able to test their own employees, get some type of a baseline and a better understanding of even people who would just be carriers of this disease, and whether that exists, what that can look like, what we can do to determine that somebody is asymptomatic and carrying. Because I think that's probably the biggest person to fear right now, is those who walk around, look healthy, feel healthy, have no symptoms, and yet they may be coming in contact with someone who could be vulnerable. And I think if we can get some of that done, because Mayo Clinic's hurting, and of course in our zone, in our region, in my district, in House District 26B, most people are aware of the fact that Mayo Clinic's a very large employer. It is the largest private employer in the state of Minnesota. So other than government entities, for the most part, Mayo Clinic comes in as the largest employer in the state. So we really have to really focus on how can we make that happen. And of course, like I said, they very early were proactive and said, we want to put these things off till we have more information. I want them to also take the lead, and that's what I've been asking them to do, is to say, we now know that if we can basically review all of our staff, review all of our patients, so that we know that they're in a safe environment, and then still take these precautions, we still can do meniscus surgery on a knee or whatever else needs to be done, because not that the economy is everything, but the economy is something, and we can't just ignore it and say that it'll take care of itself, because the reality is there are people out there that can't walk right now because they have a torn meniscus, or whatever the surgery or case might be.
Yeah, the economy. Obviously that's being thrown around all over the place, and the economy, and people are saying it's not important, it's not worth one life, and we could go down that road for days. But so here's how I view the economy. We're an interdependent people. I mean, we depend on each other in many, many ways. Everywhere we turn, we depend on each other. The Pilgrims, let's go back to Thanksgiving, right? They depended on the Indians to survive, right? And so interdependence. The economy, to me, is part of that interdependence. So I think we should label it something other than the economy, because the economy sounds like it's money. Well, the economy isn't money. If we got rid of money, the economy is still the economy. Yeah.
And now, a quick break for your ears if you're watching, and your eyes if you're... Wait, did I get that right? Here's some music. And now, back to the episode.
Yeah, even the stream of commerce is what it's otherwise, a popular way of thinking about it. And we live in a global society. So again, the impacts of this are being felt here right now. I mean, we have, my wife hated me telling her this story, but the hog operations where the hogs are being destroyed and not being processed.
Hey,
they have.
I bought a hog.
Well, that's
I bought
great.
a hog.
People need to get out there and do their part. But I mean,
it's no joke.
No, I agree.
Whole one.
It's something that's we're right now faced with that as a reality, because these there's a pipeline, and there's a disruption in the pipeline, and these animals are normally they would have been killed anyway, but now they're being killed and buried
and disposed
of, and it's a terrible situation. Now, what's the impact of that in a world where we know there are people who are dying of starvation? And again, it's a harsh segue, but that's a reality of what I've seen around the world, and for me, that's something that speaks volumes of who we are and why we have an obligation not just to our own economy, but to a global stream of commerce that's bigger than just the folks in southwestern Minnesota that can't take their hogs to slaughter right now because those animals can't get processed. So we really have some issues. And that's there are negative consequences around the world, and that will be felt not just today and tomorrow, but for the next 5
unpredictable
months,
amount of time.
Who knows how long it could be? And again, it goes a little bit to that story of these small communities. Martin County is actually the largest hog producer in the entire country. They are the largest county of hog production per capita of any place in the U.S. And it's processing centers near there that have been kind of hit with this pandemic, and the employees have had the issues, and it spread quickly because they're very close quarters and weren't taking the proper precautions prior to that.
Right.
So again, we're hoping, I think every idea from calling out the National Guard to come in there at a minimum and clean the facilities between shifts and help with identifying someone who could have the potential of having COVID and keeping them out of the plant during that time. And whether it really takes that big of a response, it's an important component, not just from the local economy, but that global economy too, because food waste is certainly something nobody wants to
and nobody's talking about that.
Right, no.
You have to dig for that kind of stuff.
Well, milk is being dumped in Wisconsin and La Crosse, daily right now.
Right.
And again, I do my part. We're strong milk drinkers in my family. So I grew up on a dairy farm in a town called Butterfield, which is right in the middle of southwestern Minnesota.
Okay.
So that's why I know that area pretty well. And so I'm always drink more milk.
Right, exactly. I was just thinking about the economy and some of the people that the whole are you willing to sacrifice one life to open the economy and things like that. Well, they're eating right now. That's the economy.
Yeah.
They have electricity right now. I'm sure that's economy. And so the economy isn't about making money. It's about actually surviving, because you can't shut things down for that long and think you're going to survive as a society. Let's even make it smaller. I have raspberry tea, and I have raspberries, and I grow raspberries. I grow like crazy, right? And you have a spring at your house, and I don't have access to water, and we trade raspberries for jugs of water. That's economy.
Right.
I don't know if people think that way, though. Do they?
Well,
that's not what I see, because I see car sales is part of the economy, and it is, because that's what we do. But if you really even make it that much smaller, it's still economy. We traded.
I think politically there are some that believe that the government will take care of all of this, and they forget that the government is us, and we have to take care of the government. So when we see these revenues, that these forecasts that will come out following this, and I wish it were more active, but we get quarterly reviews on this stuff. We get a fall forecast, and when those numbers come out, I think that will be a real eye opener for people. That if there is no income, there is no income tax.
Right.
If sales are down, there's a reduced amount of sales tax, and that's the auto industry is again, that's a sales tax revenue generator, and we've seen the auto industry is being hit pretty hard by this, and again the oil industry also is being impacted. They already having their
problems.
battle, and the fact that they literally had no place to put these barrels of oil for a time, and there was a negative price on a barrel of oil. It's unbelievable. Historically, what we're looking at right now will be in the record books forever. We will be talking about this incident forever. And again, as we have the advantage of hindsight, we can look at it in the rear
which
view
we
mirror.
Talked about off camera.
Right. When we look at this in a rear view mirror, are we going to say, man, did we overreact? Or, boy, I'm glad we did what we did. And at this point, I think we still have to say the jury's out. And I think it's fair to say it's okay to be concerned about all three things at the same time. And when I say three things, I mean government taking a huge control of our lives, the disease of COVID-19, and the economy. All these three things are dynamic in the fact that, man, you can literally worry about all three of those things at the same time. And I think you're more close to right by doing that than by focusing on any of either one of the
thing.
other two.
Right. It's interdependence. I mean, all of them depend on each other to really act and function. I mean, so but I guess I just, like you've discussed, the National Guard coming in and cleaning these factories or whatever that may be in between and things. That's surgical. That is going in and really going after something. And you could use military terms or whatever you wanted to use, but that's the whole point. I think that the broad paintbrush to just make this happen for this long doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now. And so I don't know. I guess we went down that rabbit hole a lot further than I planned on.
No
but
worries.
You
can cut this and make a second segment.
We might. And so, but I think it's so important because we're in the middle of it. The conversation kind of went that way a little bit anyway. And so I appreciate you helping me understand a little bit more, and I hope that helps somebody else. But the idea of opening the economy means you're wanting to kill people, I think it's just really small-minded.
Right.
And it's obviously they're looking at one thing, like you said, and it's not one thing. It's everything. When my daughter died in a car crash, I didn't go up I met with Governor Dayton face to face, just like this, and we discussed my opinion and they, what they wanted to do, and we talked about it, and I didn't once say, let's not let anybody drive.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
Right.
3 younger siblings, they all drive. So you have to look at the whole picture. Obviously, it's important for these things to move forward in a safe way, but you have to look at that whole big picture. And does this actually make sense? No one wants to die. I don't want anybody to die. But the reality is that is going to happen.
Yeah, it is. And again,
and it's not from COVID.
Well, and admittedly, one of the things that the governor's own experts through the Minnesota Department of Health, they came out with 2 scenarios. We lovingly referred to them as Scenario 3 and Scenario 4. And in Scenario 3, you basically are stretching out it's where does the curve begin and end. The beginning and ending point were basically the same. We're just pushing it back further on one scenario versus another. Now, if we don't have enough equipment, if we didn't have enough of the personal protection equipment, the ventilators, things like that we're really concerned about. That was what the big talks were in New York and whatnot. But we were beyond that, and we were saying we are prepared for this. Our emergency rooms are ready, and we really just kind of extended that. Rather than taking it week by week, kind of analyzing things, we push things back a number of weeks, and then we push things back a number of weeks. And I think the goal line moved, and everything from we want to.
Well, isn't that what a coach is supposed to do? I mean, make a player better.
Yeah,
is that what's happening?
If that's what works. But the reality is here we.
But this isn't practice.
The curve is the same height in both scenarios. Same number of people are going to get to the disease. Same number of people are going to die from the disease in the 2 different scenarios. One, you're just stretching it to be later. And
then over here, all these other things are happening.
And so again, if we're worried about only the one thing, if we're only worried about COVID, then that's the right solution. But because those other 2 dynamic things are happening where you really are allowing government to control your lives very firmly, and at this point, it is the governor of the state of Minnesota through the executive orders.
Yes.
So there's very little legislative oversight of this. Each one of these executive orders is viewed and studied and watched, but it's a very complex system for us to remove those executive orders from the governor, and because his political party controls one of the bodies of government in Minnesota, it's very unlikely that something like that would happen. It would take a lot of courage from a lot of Democrat members to say he's gone too far here. And again, elections have consequences. So the state of Minnesota put Democrats in charge of the Minnesota State House. And so that's the reality of the government that we elected.
Yeah.
So those checks and balances are a little off kilter, and the governor's executive orders are going to stand. It's going to be very hard to overcome that. And then the second component that I think that we've really talked about for a long time is the economic component of that.
Yeah.
Stretching that out another month to happen a month later just means our economy is not moving a month later. Now, what does that mean for us economically? From a governing standpoint, those dollars, that revenue isn't coming in to fund the life-saving, life-giving, great social programs that our state very firmly, very strongly believes in all the time. We talk about these programs all the time, taking care of all types of different communities, and it really is something where if those dollars don't come into the state's revenue, we are not the federal government. We cannot borrow our way out of this. We have to balance the state budget.
Yeah.
So our state constitution requires it.
Yeah.
We can't just print money.
Yeah.
So we're over here basically saying we won't be able to do some of the life-saving, life-giving things that we do as a state because we shut down the government, because we shut down the economy, for a month longer than we maybe needed to.
Yeah. And
so
that
would be another dynamic.
Yeah, and that's where I tried to make that circle smaller and water raspberries. Mm-hmm. I mean, you need some fruit to live, and I need some water to live, and therefore if we say no, we're not going to exchange these things, now we both perish. Right? I mean, that's just the reality of it. Mm-hmm. I think the problem that I have with a lot of it is the trust on both sides of it, the trust the government has for its people and the trust that the people have for its government is really eroding quickly. And I mean, that's what I see. I think
a few people now in the public would believe that if we did open things up, they would think everything's okay.
Sure.
Whereas if we told people,
I see,
we're going to have to shut things down if we can't follow these rules. Yeah. And these are, part of your social contract today is to not be within 6 feet of each other or to take the precautions you need to.
Well, this is a 4-foot table and you're sitting and I'm leaning. So
it's one of those things where if that social contract were out there saying, you need to take personal responsibility for this, that's important. But right now, we kind of have it where everything's shut down and we're just going to say, okay, everything's back to normal. And that's not going to be the way it should happen moving forward.
No,
either.
I agree with that.
We all have to take those precautions. We all talked about the immunocompromised, the folks that are aged that would have weak immune systems anyway, but my father was a heart transplant recipient too, so for him he was always on some type of medication that knocked out his immune system. So
and it wouldn't be good for my mom to get it either. She has asthma and a couple things that this seems to attack. So absolutely agree there, but I also want her to live a lot longer, which also means the economy has to kind of get going. And we say that word economy again, and everybody freaks out.
Right.
I mean, so let's move on.
Sure.
Adoption. What a segue, huh? It might be related, but
let's not try to make it related. It's fine.
But it kind of, I heard a little bit that you did have issue with government in another country, and tell us about that.
Sure. Well, we've as we discussed really early in the session, we had two biological children, and we felt so blessed and so happy with that at the time. And
how old are they?
They're now 16 and 14.
Yeah.
And again, they were just perfect in every way. And
can I say their names?
Sure, yeah. Sonia is our daughter, and she's 16.
And Charlie.
And Nels the fourth, technically, that's his real name.
I've heard him called Charlie.
Charlie is a total random nickname.
No
that
way.
Started when he was a little boy.
Wow.
We just start calling him Charlie, and there's really
the fourth though. Okay, we got to stop.
Pressure.
We got to pause
third.
there, right?
Yeah.
What's the story with that?
So I don't know.
If you're the third, he's the fourth.
I think in both circumstances, my father and myself were a little hesitant to do that. The story of when I was named is that my father, I mentioned the heart transplant that he had. Well, in 1972, when I was born, the doctor that was delivering me saw my dad. And I think I was born on a Friday. I wasn't there until I got there. And but when I was born, the doctor said,
I think that just went over everybody's head. But reverse it for like 30 seconds and listen to that again.
Yeah. So when Nels Jr., my dad, when Nels Jr. was at the hospital, they said, you need to schedule an appointment. You don't look well.
Oh, no kidding.
And the Monday after I was born, I believe my dad went into the hospital and he was diagnosed with a cardiomyopathy, which is a virus of the heart.
Yeah.
So it's not genetic or anything I need to worry about, but his he lived with that through medication and some a couple incidences where he had gone to the hospital while his family was home and scared that he wasn't going to come home, and but he survived that for a number of years, from 72 until about 1988 would have been, I think, about the year that he had a heart transplant. And at that time it was when I was actually not named then.
Okay.
So I just realized why this story started.
Yeah.
So I wasn't named. My original health certificate, in fact, when I was still like getting my physicals for high school sports, the doctor would always chuckle because he'd say, "Oh, it says baby Nels Pierson."
Right.
And because first it was just baby Pierson, and so they left that on the health record apparently, and I was baby Nels Pierson. So maybe that nickname will stick.
Right now, I think we're gonna let's make that go viral.
So anyway, it took a while.
When you run for governor,
we're gonna. The fact that my father's aunts were so upset with him that he wasn't naming me Nels, that they put the pressure on. And for my wife and I, we still, up to the moment that Nels the Fourth was born, and even probably the next day, we came to the conclusion that we should go ahead and carry that name on. We're very, we very much so like the aspect that the name isn't common.
Yeah, that's
no offense, Matt.
No, exactly, and absolutely, totally.
For me, and again, there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, we've tried to select Sonia even as a name.
Yeah.
At the same time, we really liked Sophie, and now it's a very popular, very, very, very popular name.
Absolutely.
And especially at the time that she was all these kids her age, I think she's been in school with a few of them at a time.
Yeah.
So we've been pretty adamant about name selection, and then there's Mardache. So that's our third child.
Yeah.
So
let's hear that story. How did that all come about?
Well, again, we when the first two were born, we kind of made the decision that we would maybe someday adopt in the future. We didn't know what that would look like or be like, and the kids were getting older, and we're kind of living our life and enjoying things and just having conversations. We started having conversations with our kids and saying, well, what do you think it would look like if we added another brother or sister, and how would you guys feel about that? And of course they were both very excited because it just sounds like fun, right? I don't know if all kids would react that way or not.
It depends on their age.
Our kids were very excited about it. So this would have been about the time that Nels the fourth would have been 5 or 6, and Sonia would be a couple of years older than that, and so we were looking at those dynamics at that time and just trying to figure out how that would work and how that would look. And we kind of did a lot of research online, and my wife had gotten on a specific website, and Rainbow Kids, I think, was the name of it, and it was like a international adoption, kind of a broad spectrum of different programs that were out there. And we were researching different programs, and then we actually started researching different countries. And one of the things that drew us to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where we ultimately landed our hearts on a very specific boy that we saw a picture of online on one of these websites. We were very focused on what was going on in the DRC at that time. And it's a country that's near Rwanda and has sort of similar plights in the fact that there's a lot of valuable minerals in that country. Coltan is a very popular mineral that's globally traded, worth a lot of money right now. When it's mined in very, very, very bad conditions by small children in a lot of situations. Some of the mines are controlled through conflict, through a lot of strife and a lot of battle, a lot of global manipulation of what's going on over there. So there's a lot of orphans. There's a lot of need in some of these countries, a lot of poverty, and again, that's not for us necessarily what it's about, but if we can do our part and grow our family with a child that we're very proud of, and there was always just something like next level about this specific child for us. Again, one picture on a website, you just really powerful. Can't say how can that make you say that is the one. But a lot of times people hire someone to assist you through the international adoption process. We kind of did the opposite. We were like, who is working with this child? How can we adopt this specific child? And then went through the process of essentially your home study, all the background check, all of the work that has to be done to satisfy another government that this is
and
a good
not a
environment.
Very stable government at that, right?
The Congolese government is something that at that time we thought was in a better circumstance. And again, not to get super political about things, but the American government helped get a very specific leader elected to be the president of Congo, basically because he had agreed upon term limits. The problem was by the time our adoption was finalized, he had decided that he wasn't necessarily going to abide by term limits any longer, and started creating very specific requirements for children to leave the country. Okay. So our circumstances basically,
otherwise, well, let me talk about that really quick. So a thought pops in my head, and you look at a country with what you're describing and the strife and the orphans and the terrible situations. I suppose the thought process for them is like, if we really loosen this up and open it up, we're going to lose all our kids. Does that add up?
Boy,
you know what I'm saying?
It's not been my interpretation of what causes that for Congo specifically.
No, but I mean, in a circumstance like that, is that come down to like, hey, the rest of the world sees all these problems?
Most of these kids are wards of the state. The state is having to take care of them. So in a lot of ways, it's almost an inverse reaction of saying, it's a prideful type of saying, we've got this covered. We can take care of our own kids. We don't need to adopt children. And there's also kind of a mindset, and again, I've never lived there.
Yeah.
I've spent less than 2 weeks in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I'm no expert.
Yeah.
This isn't, when I'm involved in politics, geopolitical politics is not my specialty. So if I'm misstating something, this is purely my perception.
Yeah.
In many ways, this is something for my perception where it was a prideful, we can take care of our kids. And there's almost like a paranoia of why would anyone want to adopt someone else's child? It doesn't make sense because in many ways, children are seen a little bit more so as a burden.
Yeah.
And like, why would you want to take someone else's child on as someone you're going to take care of? And in different countries, you'll see that, and there's very specific things that were going on in the United States when we had started our process. Homosexual marriage had become legal in the United States. There was documented concern that heterosexual couples were adopting children from Congo, bringing them to the United States where they'd be readopted. And these were things that their government was concerned with. Now, obviously I don't know what other additional assurances a person can provide at that point to say that that's not going to happen in this situation. But those were things and
that's really
in a lot of
enlightening.
Situations, they would say, well, these are the reasons why we're having these additional requirements. And at the time that Mardochée was adopted, he was about the same age as Nels IV. They're 4 months apart. So at that time, we were going through this process. He became our son legally in the Democratic Republic of Congo. We could have moved to Congo and lived with our son in Congo. He just was not allowed to leave the Democratic Republic of Congo. So he was legally our son, but he couldn't leave the country. They required an exit letter at that time. We were not the only family in this situation. There were over 1,400 U.S. families that were in this situation, and then hundreds of additional other countries that were. The Democratic Republic of Congo is closely tied to the Netherlands, and so there's that component too. So there's just all of this. Belgium. I said that wrong.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was the Belgian Congo before it was the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, you're looking at this stuff through that lens and saying, this president is requiring this exit letter, and only he's the one that's going to hand those out, and you just wonder why that is. And so, in a lot of ways, it seemed like it was more like gaining pressure to remain in power. There were pushes at that time to have President Obama call, and he did. It took a while, but he did, and it didn't. That intercession didn't necessarily do it either. Basically, through additional legal representations, there were the abilities to get the exit letter finally, and so 3 years later, Mardochée was able to come home. So we bring this. What we were hoping to bring home was this beautiful 6-year-old boy. Now he's 9 years old.
Yeah.
And he's coming home to the United States for the first time. So.
And he's 14 now?
He's 14 now. Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
He's a great kid.
Yeah.
Big smile, happy, popular. Everyone loves Mardochée.
You know what's really cool? I heard a story probably last fall, and a similar situation, but this adopted child is, I think, in their late 50s right now, or that's when they told me, maybe they're late 50s, early 60s. And this particular person went back to their country in over the last 10 years, has remarkably changed the dynamics of how people look at things in their government, because they were raised in the United States and all these things and freedoms and education, all those things like that. And those are the things that are just, that you could never know how that could change an entire country. That's so cool. Have you thought about that?
I have. We had this unique opportunity when we were going through the process. One of the things that wasn't required in a Democratic Republic of Congo adoption was you didn't have to take a trip over there to go through court before you adopt. And in some countries, you go there, you go through court, and then you go home, and then you come back and bring your child home. It wasn't required in the DRC. The journey for the adoption ended up taking so long that our agency set up this trip. And it was all the same families that were working with the agency in the United States. So there probably were close to 10 families. And they basically had us make reservations at a hotel complex. And I use the word complex because it's literally, 15-foot high walls with razor wire all the way around it. It's a compound. It's separate buildings. There happened to be a swimming pool, which was apparently very hard to find in for those types of accommodations in Congo. So we all kind of stayed together, and that's when I say we've spent 2 weeks there. We were in Kinshasa, the capital city, and that ability to be there was a great experience and something worth talking about all on its own. Of all of the random things that would happen, the gates open one day and these government officials are walking in, nice suits, very sharply dressed. And one of the families that was there had made arrangements to meet with someone. And so I'm out in the parking lot area, which there aren't many cars moving through there because it's a compound, right? The gate had to be open to allow these guys to,
like this
to
is
come in.
A secure compound.
Right, very. And we're just playing soccer in the parking lot area because it's an open area, and soccer is definitely universal, right?
For sure.
So I'm pretty sure Marta Shea already was able to whoop up on me pretty well in soccer. And we're there, and I'm wearing a T-shirt, and this guy walks up to me, and he says, "You're from Rochester, Minnesota."
You're kidding me. And
the shirt I'm wearing is the DMC shirt for Rochester at that time. And, I mean, we're talking a long time ago already, right? I wasn't elected into the legislature or anything yet. And it just had it was the state of Minnesota on the front with a little logo on the deal. And that's what he identified. He and his brother, he had been adopted and lived in Rochester, Minnesota. And his brother had never left Congo. And these two young men are now government officials for the Democratic Republic
about the same
of Congo.
person?
What do you mean?
Well, I'm wondering if this is the same. I don't know anyone's names.
He'd be younger than us.
So
okay. This guy from the DRC.
I was told that right now he's in his late 50s.
No,
I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is the same person?
It is real, like literally. And now I follow him on Facebook, and we have some conversations from time to time, and just finding out how things are going. It is. It's bizarre, though. And again, knowing his ability, Marta Shea's ability to learn languages, how, again, he's learning our government system firsthand. I mean, one of the very first things we did when he came home was, again, he spoke very little English, just hello and goodbye and just some pleasantries and whatnot. And so it was like this, how are we going to explain to him, 'cause this is when we were elected and we finally did come home, how are we going to explain to him why is dad gone during the week? Because I live in St. Paul during session. How do I explain to this kid what it is I do? And so instead of explaining it to him, I took him along, and he just shadowed me for a day.
Wow.
And it was like amazing because, again, he had to sit through committees and just kind of watch, and I, trying to explain to him what's going on. And he speaks a little bit of French. He actually speaks Lingala. He was learning French, but Lingala is the Congolese language that was most prominent for him. And so it's like this experience of trying to show him what I do. So he definitely knows Minnesota government pretty well. And so it is interesting to think, well, will he someday, help with government in another country, or what will he be drawn towards in the future? But he's an amazing kid. Just
that's cool.
A lot of love, a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, and he's getting big. He's a big 14-year-old.
Sidebar, really quick. What year were you elected?
In 2014, I won my election, so I was sworn in 15.
15, yeah. Mm-hmm. I think you told me that off camera. Or maybe on camera, I don't remember. Sorry.
And now, a quick break for you to think about all the things you love in life, like Skittles. I love Skittles. And now, back to the episode.
The question I have, I testified up at both the Senate and the House, or kind of however. Were you elected at that time? I can't remember what year that was.
Probably would have been.
Was I there?
Right?
Do you remember?
Probably, yeah. Well, so you testified in a committee?
Yeah.
So it'd depend on the committee.
It was like the whole, I mean, there was 50, 60 people there.
Sure. So that would be a committee, not the legislative, not the full House.
Not the full.
Yeah.
Okay. So then they brought the testimonies or whatever.
And so you might have testified to like a civil law committee or public safety committee.
It is public safety.
One. Yeah. So then you'd been in front of lobbyists. And
I see.
I don't sit on that committee.
I
sit on Health and Human Services. So depending on
Carlson, is he a Congress?
A rep? Is he a rep?
Yeah.
There's a Lyndon Carlson.
Yes, I think that's
Lyndon
the name.
Carlson is the longest serving member of any legislature in the country.
Okay.
In the state
he
of
was
Minnesota,
there. He came up and talked to
yeah.
me afterwards.
Literally was sworn into
others.
office. Let's see. He would have won his election before I was born and gotten sworn in 3 days after I was born.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, I'm a late December baby, and they would have been sworn in like January 2nd that year. So it's pretty mind-boggling and intimidating to walk up to a guy who's been in the legislature as long as you've been alive.
Right.
He and Phyllis Kahn were the longest serving members, and then she got defeated by Ilhan Omar, so she's no longer holds that record. It's all Lyndon Carlson now, so he gets to carry that torch.
Yeah, that's just interesting.
Sidebar,
that kind of started to click a little bit. So why would a person just work that hard for someone you don't know? Share your heart on that. How?
Sure,
I get it. I haven't adopted or anything like that, but I get it. I've seen it. There's a family member that's been adopted, and we love her just like my other cousins. I mean, it's
right. Well,
she's a cousin,
and I think that's one way of just kind of opening your eyes to it a little bit, is to not really view it as someone else's child. This is your own child.
Exactly.
And adoption is for us just a different way of growing our family.
Yeah.
There are days where, again, I see myself in all of my children. And so that's something that's always special, like seeing his work ethic and seeing him grow, seeing him joke around the same way that I do, whether it's whether it's with me or his siblings or things like that.
Is that a good thing?
You know, I think it is. And again, knowing that you're making that impression on any child is important
for sure.
You know, we've gone down the path again and have another adopted son from the Democratic Republic of Congo who we heard about through Facebook channels, this abandoned orphan baby that was found in a ditch, needing health. The plea had gone out on Facebook. We need a family whose paperwork ready. At the time, we were going through the process to do a Minnesota Waiting Kids foster through adoption program.
Okay.
So we've done a lot of the background checks again, had done a lot of the social work, home studies, things like that are requirements of any adoption, whether it's domestic or abroad. So they were looking for a family who was paperwork ready, who lived near a medical facility. And when my wife read that and she told me about it, I said, well, so you've already submitted our name? And she said, yes.
Yeah.
So, we started down that path, even though the U.S. State Department had warned people that the Democratic Republic of Congo, the stability of the government is a concern. The system that they have for adoptions was of a concern. But in this circumstance, we see this very specific baby who's found, who's immediately brought to a police station. The police do all of the active investigations. There's no family to be found for this baby. And so we, I guess, had the courage to step forward in that situation and kind of took a chance, and we've gone through the process again. And currently, again, our adoptions going through, everything's fine on the adoption side. This time, it's actually the U.S. government that's a little bit of a challenge for us. We're dealing with a State Department this time around that's very skeptical of all of these adoptions. They're worried about fraud. They're worried about abuses in these systems. And again, I don't work in that world. I don't claim to know. And if I didn't believe in this specific baby's situation, I maybe wouldn't go after or seek out an adoption through the Democratic Republic of Congo again either. But now we're in this process. We have an adopted son named Finn.
Okay.
Which again, this time we got to name our son.
Sure.
So we dug through and poured through and fought as a family over these names. And Finn Henry is living in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's living in an orphanage. We're paying for his care and taking care of, making sure he's taken care of. His medical issues have been stabilized. He's fine. He's growing. He's a healthy 2-year-old boy now. And we have no answers from our State Department as to when this 2-year-old boy will be for the processing to actually occur for this adoption. This time around, there's like 7 families from the United States that are similarly situated that are trying to get kids home. And each of those are unique circumstances. Some of them had adopted children from that family prior.
Okay.
There's just different situations that have created this. So even though the U.S. State Department has kind of warned everyone, we really thought we could get through these processes with this specific children. And we have, again, legal representation that provides us with assurances of who these kids are and what the plight of these children is. And so we're in that process. And then because he was so little and my other kids are older, there's 12 years between Martache and Finn Henry, we actually had started the process also to adopt a child through the same attorney, a child that was being born in Texas. And that child was supposed to be born here in April, 2 days before the birth was to be induced. The birth mother who had chosen us, who we'd been matched with and we'd been communicating with and got ultrasound pictures from and had great discussions and shown pictures of the nursery and all this work that we were doing. She decided 2 days before the baby was going to be induced that she was going to keep the baby. So that was very recent and a little raw for me still. But we as a family have really been processing this and really had to focus on just how thankful we really need to be that this child is not an orphan.
Yeah.
This child is loved by their mother. And again, all of these parents come to the decisions of why a child would be given up for adoption. Again, sometimes a true orphan has a mother and father who are no longer with us. Those situations don't always happen. So the other reasons for adoption are out there. And again, we just continue to pray for the mother and baby and hope all is well. And she hasn't responded to the text since 2 days before the induction date. So, we're not certain the baby was born, but, we're hopeful and praying that baby and mother are doing well. And at this point, again, we're prepared. We've got our hearts and our home prepared for a baby girl to come home. If a baby boy, became available or something like that, we'd have to, change up some paint colors or something. But I think we could accommodate that even too. But for us, it's answering your question of for us, it's just a part of growing our family. And I think family planning is a personal decision that everybody has to make on their own. Yeah. As far as what their financial comfort levels are, of what their physical comfort levels are. We try not to put limitations on that. For us, this new grouping of children is unique, I think. And Finn, the lack of certainty of when Finn will come home kind of creates this question of, are we nuts to adopt a baby into our house in preparation of a 2-year-old son that may not come home for another year or two. We really don't have answers on that yet either. So it's definitely different, and for us it's certainly a challenge. We're just so grateful to have the capacity and ability to do it. And again, we love children, and we're so blessed with the 3 we have home now, and we get little video clips of Finn Henry too. He's looks like he's going to be a handful and a little bit of a ham. So we're excited for him to come home too.
Is he getting the medical attention that he needs?
Yeah. So
until he gets here,
right?
Or?
Well, so it's again, even when Mardache was in Congo, and Finn's dealt with it too. There's just things like the fact that you find out after the fact that your child has had malaria or was hospitalized for something like that, and something that in the United States would just be unheard of. You just wouldn't talk about that. We vaccinate or make sure kids don't have exposures to those types of things, and so for the most part, he's in very good health, and when he comes home, we know there'll be a medical procedure that will be waiting for him too. But it's not something that's going to be. He's going to thrive and survive until that happens anyway, so that'll be fine.
Yeah, well, that's really cool. Anything else? We've had a great conversation. I feel like if I
didn't sell any houses. I thought we were talking about real estate.
Yeah, right. No, that wasn't it at all.
No, for sure.
But we sure can. I actually do have questions about that, but let's do that really quick. So my biggest question is that the fear that's tied to everything, is that going to affect the purchasing, or is the actual economy and the state of it, is that going to affect it? They're two very different things.
Yeah, for sure. And there's short-term impacts of this right now. We've seen a hesitation of sellers to get their houses on the market, which is, we've been dealing with a shortage of inventory anyway. So that's really creating the present discussions of what's going on in real estate. It's a wonderful time to list a house, which is not what you would expect right now. There's so little inventory out there, and it's somehow amplified by this uncertainty. It's actually the sellers who are most hesitant in our market. Buyers are still out there. They know they are coming to Rochester, or they know they are wanting to get out of their rental situation in Rochester. So there's that stability. The only thing that can create instability in the buyers is again, these furloughs. And I think that's going to be a potential glitch in a lot of transactions that are happening presently is again, if the bank sees that you're no longer working for your employer, they're not going to approve that final loan on closing date, and that's definitely creating, I think, some real issues for people to deal with. I think long term we still are just we're gonna come out of this and continue to thrive. Restaurants will close, but restaurants will open again after this. Sure. Small businesses will close, and small businesses will fill their spaces. There'll be a lot of loss in funds, there'll be bankruptcies, there'll be some sad, tragic stories that will happen because of this. But generally, we have an economy that's powerful and strong in our market locally in Rochester, with healthcare being a primary component of the sector, and the ability of Mayo Clinic to sustain this. They will be able to come out of this on the other end. They will lose money. Mm-hmm. But for them, they can lose some money for a period of time. We'll see other smaller hospitals in the state of Minnesota that can't. Yeah. And when that happens, Mayo Clinic will probably fill those shoes also, whether that's taking over those healthcare systems or taking over those facilities and having, again, like we currently have, is just a strong Mayo network across the state of Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin. I think they're even down in Iowa. And of course, we know they have other campuses in other states as well.
Right.
But regionally here, I think that's still going to be a positive impact. And you really have to prepare for the fact that we still have a population that's here working. Mm-hmm. They're going to go back to work eventually, even if it's post-vaccine. And then that's really talking a bad situation.
Yeah.
I think somewhere between post-vaccine and today, we're getting a lot of people back to work. And I think as a state, we need to focus on getting more and more of those folks back in. So that's short-term, long-term, that for me is where I'm coming at it from an investor standpoint. I think it's a great time to invest in real estate. Interest rates are super low. I don't think we're going to see prices coming down in the short term. Even though one would like to see that happen.
Yeah.
We just still have this population that's here. And other than the fact that some people won't be able to get financed right now, that's the only thing that's going to pull the buyer's pressure back. That demand pressure is going to be eased up because some people just won't qualify until they have the assurance that their paycheck is going to be coming in beyond the $1,200. I don't know if you've seen the HGTV spoofs on this.
I haven't.
There's an HGTV spoof because there's all these shows where people go out and buy houses on these TV shows. They'll look at three houses.
Yeah,
So it's this husband-wife couple that's basically on one of these spoofs of this show.
So they've already created a spoof.
They've created a spoof of this, and here's husband. I'm currently unemployed, but I just got my $1,200 check, and the wife says the same thing. And then they say, and our budget for our house is $1.2 million, and it's not reality, right? That does not a buyer make just because you say your budget's $1.2 million and your income is your $1,200 check. That's not going to work. And again, probably shouldn't make light of the situation, but I'm literally describing someone else.
I think
that's a quote. When you're quoting someone else in our house, you can say almost anything you want to say as long as you're actually quoting what someone else
verbatim
said. So that's a quote, and please don't come after
not
me.
You're right.
Attack me on Facebook. Anyway.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's definitely a balance that you need to have some fun with bad situations, and I completely get that. But it also has to be respectful.
Yeah. If you don't laugh, you cry, and right now I think that's where we're at in a lot of situations.
But you can't laugh everything away either. No. That's actually more dangerous.
Right.
I mean, you have to occasionally.
Yeah.
But it's more dangerous. So, man, fun conversation.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks a lot for coming in, and thanks for just pouring your heart out there. Thanks for showing people, just really what it means to do what you do and to have the courage that you have. Now, I was going to reveal this at a live big event we were going to have in the middle of May, but guess what?
Probably not going to have
we can't.
That
you guys said we can't have
it. No. Who said we can't have it?
I'm just teasing you. No.
Sorry,
and so,
Governor.
So right, exactly. Let me say this. I'm really, really happy I'm not in the positions to make these kind of decisions. Agree or disagree, I'm really happy I'm not in that position. That'd be tough.
Sure.
That would be tough. So thank you for doing that. Thanks for standing up. But what I'm going to say is about 5 or 6 years ago now probably, I went into a group of around 200 men into this company and did a teaching on some things as a speaker. And, basically to shorten this up and the big reveal and kind of the path of what we're trying to teach here at Matt Logan Speaks is this. Nels, you are shiny, and you are strong, you are hope, you are influential, you are necessary, and you are you. And thank you for being shiny.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're shiny too.
Thank you. My shirt says I am shiny.
I see that.
Yes.
Very nice.
Thanks a lot. Everybody, we'll see you next time. Make sure that if you like this, like it on social media, thumbs up on YouTube, things like that. You can find us everywhere, Apple Podcast, Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I mentioned YouTube already. And pass this along. I mean, I think that we need to, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, pass it along to somebody that might enjoy it and like it. We greatly appreciate that. So we'll see you next time.